Welcome to You Matter Podcast, YMP. Episode 3, Aida and the Theatre of Empire, Art, Power and the Politics of the Nile. For thousands of years, one question has shaped the fate of nations along the Nile. Who controls the river that gives them life? From the days of the pharaohs to the present, Egypt's rulers have dreamed of mastering the Nile, its floods, its stories, its meaning. They've used faith, they've used armies, and at times they've used art itself. Today we look at one of the most famous works ever used to serve that dream, Giuseppe Verdi's Aida, an opera of love and empire, a performance where art becomes power and beauty conceals ambition. Welcome to You Matter Podcast. This is Aida and the Theatre of Empire, Art, Power and the Politics of the Nile. Imagine a grand opera, sweeping, dramatic, overwhelming. Now imagine it serving not only art, but empire. That opera is Aida. Set in ancient Egypt, it tells the story of Aida, an enslaved Ethiopian princess, and Radames, the Egyptian general who loves her. Their forbidden love unfolds against a backdrop of war, conquest, and divine ceremony. In Verdi's version, Egypt stands noble and radiant, a symbol of civilization and triumph. Ethiopia, by contrast, is cast as defeated, subdued, and voiceless. Yet history tells another story. Only a few years before the opera's 1871 premiere, Ethiopia had not fallen. It had triumphed. In 1875 and 1876, Ethiopian forces defeated Egypt's modern army at Gundet and Gura. The victors of the real war became the vanquished of the stage. What the world applauded as art was, in truth, propaganda. Aida turned military failure into cultural victory. It rewrote history to make empire appear beautiful, but behind that beauty lay purpose. Egypt was preparing to expand south, to control the sources of the Nile. It sought foreign officers, foreign money, foreign approval. It was a political campaign dressed as culture, and this story is not just about the past. The alliance between military aid, narrative control, and diplomatic power still shapes the present. The stage is larger now, the orchestra louder, but the melody remains familiar. To look deep, let's talk about the person at the heart of the matter, Ismail Pasha. When Ismail Pasha became Khedive in 1863, he declared his ambition. Egypt would be European in every sense. He built railways, canals, palaces, and an army. He imagined Egypt not as a province, but as a modern empire sustained by the Nile. The river had always been Egypt's heartbeat. For millennia, it defined power and survival. Pharaohs built canals to command its floods. Dynasties rose and fell with its rhythm. The ruler who mastered the river mastered Egypt. By the 19th century, that instinct became political ambition. Ismail's grandfather, Muhammad Ali, had already sent armies deep into Sudan in the 1820s, conquering provinces along the Nile to secure grain and power. Khartoum became a garrison. The dream of controlling the river's source had begun. When Ismail took power, he inherited that dream. He wanted not only to manage the Nile, but to command every land it touched, from the delta to the Ethiopian highlands. To rule the river, Egypt had to stand above it. But ambition came with a price. Ismail borrowed heavily from Europe. He brought in American officers, veterans of the Civil War, to modernize his army. By 1875, more than 100,000 men drilled under foreign command. The goal was clear: make Egypt the dominant power of the Nile basin. Europe supplied the money. Western officers supplied the tactics. Egypt supplied the bodies. It sounds like a 19th century story. But listen closely. Today, Egypt receives over $1 billion a year in US military aid, the second largest recipient in the world. Its army, once reformed by American generals, is now equipped by American factories, and its regional stance still enjoys Western diplomatic protection. That protection carries a cost. Ethiopia, once the target of Egypt's expansion, is cornered again. Not by cannons, but by narrative. Loans withheld. Progress reframed as provocation. The pattern endures. The curtain rises. Aida as the soundtrack of power. It begins with music, trumpets, processions, a nation on display. In 1871, Cairo unveiled its spectacle. Aida, an opera of love and war, performed in a marble opera house built to make Egypt appear Europe's equal. But behind the chorus was a message. Egypt is not a colony. Egypt is an empire, and this opera was its declaration. The year was 1869. The Suez Canal had just opened. Ismail Pasha dazzled the world with fireworks, royal guests, and grand architecture. But something was missing, a story to tell Europe who Egypt had become. He commissioned an opera, a story about Africa told through European eyes. He turned to Giuseppe Verdi. Verdi hesitated, then accepted. The plot was written by a French Egyptologist. At its heart, Aida is not romance. It's symbolism. An Egyptian general, a captured Ethiopian princess, a forbidden love. Beneath the passion lies a familiar theme, conquest disguised as beauty. Egypt appears noble and eternal. Ethiopia appears conquered and erased. It's not history, it's theatre. And in that theatre, empire found its voice. The Khedivial Opera House became Cairo's statement to Europe. Marble from Italy, chandeliers from France, velvet from Milan. Aida premiered not as entertainment, but as diplomacy. In seeking Europe's approval, Egypt adopted Europe's gaze. It borrowed its myths, its music, its worldview. To look powerful, it had to be seen through foreign eyes. As Edward Said once wrote, Aida turned empire into beauty. A politics of representation where art disguised control. The silence of Ethiopia. In Aida, Ethiopia exists only as a backdrop. Its king bows, its princess dies, its army vanishes. A nation reduced to scenery, yet history tells the opposite. Only a few years before Aida premiered, Ethiopia had defeated Egypt twice. At Gundet in 1875 and Gura in 1876. Those victories changed the Horn of Africa. Ethiopia, under Emperor Johannes IV, defended its sovereignty against an army armed with European rifles and led by American generals. At Gundet, Egyptian columns were crushed in a narrow valley. At Gura, the larger expedition met the same fate. Thousands perished. The dream of conquering the source of the Nile dissolved in dust. But Europe looked away. It celebrated the opera, not the history. It applauded the music that buried the truth. Defeat became beauty. Conquest became civilization. That silence endures. When Ethiopia builds dams to light its cities, the story is still written elsewhere. When it seeks to use the Nile for energy, it's called defiance, not development. Western media frame self-reliance as threat. Diplomats call for restraint, not respect. The stage has changed, from Cairo's Opera House to the United Nations, but the story remains the same. Egypt is framed as the guardian of order, Ethiopia as the disruptor. The river that unites them is still narrated as a border, not a bond. But beneath that noise, Ethiopia endures, quietly, patiently. Its silence is not absence. It is composure before another act of resilience. From opera to diplomacy. The 19th century called it the civilizing mission. It promised order but delivered control. Today the words have changed. Security, regional balance, cooperation, but the structure remains. The Enlightenment once promised reason and equality, yet it also justified empire. Now it rationalizes inequality through diplomacy. The same tone that excused conquest still decides who deserves progress and who must wait. The Opera House has become the United Nations. Rows of microphones replace marble balconies. The powerful conduct their orchestra of order, while others are told when to speak and when to pause. Ethiopia has stood in that chamber, accused not of war, but of development. Its dam, the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, became a case before the Security Council. Egypt, backed by Europe and Washington, called it a threat to existence. Though the dam harms no one, the Council listened as if empire still whispered in its ear. And so, truth becomes performance. Justice becomes applause. The melody of diplomacy sounds polite but plays the same refrain. Control mistaken for peace. Hierarchy mistaken for harmony. In this global theatre, soft power has replaced cannons. Culture, media and spectacle are the new weapons. The Olympics, world summits and glossy diplomacy echo Aida's logic. Grandeur as legitimacy. Egypt plays the role of stability. Ethiopia again is written as defiance. The new Aida isn't sung in Cairo, it's debated in New York. Diplomats replace singers, resolutions replace arias, and the applause still comes from the same seats. Curtain call, the river and the truth. Aida still tours the world. Its music still enchants. But few remember that it was born from empire, financed by debt, and staged for power. The opera's structure endures. In the headlines, the speeches, the aid agreements. It's the same performance in modern dress. Beauty masking dominance. Diplomacy replacing conquest. When the final note of Aida fades, one question remains. What makes art great? Its beauty or its honesty? In Verdi's masterpiece, love dies, but empire lives on. And each time the curtain rises, so does the memory of how art can serve power. But art can also resist. It can retell, reframe, and redeem. Perhaps the next opera of the Nile will not glorify conquest, but connection. Because the Nile, like truth, belongs to no empire.